That night felt strangely disconnected from the rest of the world. No wind, no moonlight, just a heavy silence pressing down like a woolen blanket pulled too tight. The streets of the city were almost entirely empty and the air tasted metallic, like old coins left in a damp drawer. Miles Holloway, a British-born documentary filmmaker now living in Boston, had made a career out of chasing urban legends and forgotten histories. But this story, was different. Platform 13, an old, sealed-off part of the city's historic Central Railway terminal, decommissioned in 1978 according to faded reports and rust-stained blueprints. The official story claimed an electrical fire shut it down, but whispers in maintenance halls, half-erased logbooks, and a decades-old tape recording said otherwise. They said a train had departed from that platform on a cold winter night and had never returned. 67 passengers on board. No wreckage, no survivors, no investigation. Just a heavy metal door welded shut and the entire section sealed like a tomb. That was enough to pull Miles in. Tonight, armed with his camera, a thermal recorder, a pocket flashlight, and one curious relic, a frayed old train ticket with the word return stamped in red, he was going to find out what happened. He entered through the rear access corridor behind the station's old signal tower, a place long abandoned and crawling with rusted pipes and exposed brick. The gate had already been broken, recently, by the looks of it. Something had come through before him, something, or someone. His boots echoed as he descended the winding metal staircase, filming everything as he moved. Day 1. Entry into the restricted zone, he whispered into his lapel mic. The deeper he went, the colder the air became. Not like natural cold, but a damp, suffocating chill that felt almost intentional, like the station itself was warning him to turn back. Finally, he reached a long concrete hallway lined with steel doors. At the very end, barely visible through layers of dust and old graffiti, was a sign bolted above a curved archway. Platform 13. Decommissioned. Miles exhaled, gripped his flashlight tighter, and stepped through. The moment his foot crossed the threshold, his flashlight flickered. Just once, then again, and then it stabilized. The air changed completely, dense, almost underwater. The platform itself was much larger than he'd expected from the blueprints. Long tracks stretched out into fog, but something was wrong. There were no connecting rails. No visible power lines, no way a train could ever arrive here, yet the grooves of the track were polished as if still used. Something in the air shifted, and that's when he heard it, the soft sound of footsteps echoing in the distance. Slow, steady, coming toward him. But no shadows, no visible body, just the heavy, deliberate sound of leather soles on cracked concrete. He froze, scanning the platform with his flashlight, but saw no one. The footsteps stopped. Then, a different sound. A low, almost melodic hum began filling the space. A broken lullaby, warped like an old cassette. Then, a horn. Deep. Metallic. Impossible. The platform trembled under his boots as a train began to emerge from the mist. It didn't make sense. The tracks were dead. There were no power lines, no engine in sight, and yet there it was. An old black metal train gliding silently into the station, its exterior rusted but intact, its windows glowing with a cold bluish light that didn't illuminate anything. The doors didn't creak. They opened with a crisp, clean hiss. An automated voice crackled from nowhere. Midnight line, now boarding. The sound was ancient but clear, and it struck something deep inside him. A memory? A warning? His heart pounded. His instincts screamed to run, but his legs didn't listen. It was as if the air itself had thickened around his feet, rooting him to the platform. One of the train doors slid open, just one. Inside he could see no seats, no people. Just a narrow corridor lined with old, tarnished mirrors. But the mirrors didn't reflect him. Instead, they showed scenes, children sobbing, women calling out in static-laced whispers, men with blurred faces, some burned, some howling in silence. Miles lifted his camera and took a single step inside. The door closed behind him with a mechanical hiss. The train didn't jolt forward or lurch like it had started. It just moved, smoothly. Like it wasn't gliding on rails but floating above them, or something else entirely. As he walked deeper inside, the humming returned, only now it was layered with other sounds. The ding of distant station bells, announcements in fading tones, laughter, then crying, then screaming. It wasn't just sounds anymore, it was emotion, memories. He could feel them brush against him like static. And then he heard a woman's voice whisper, so close to his ear it made his skin crawl. "Don't look behind you." So he did. He turned the camera, everything went black. When he opened his eyes, he was in a different compartment. This one had seats, but they were all occupied, every single one. And each passenger had their face covered with something different. Old newspapers, masks, long curtains of hair. Silent, still. His breath fogged in the cold, unnatural air. Beside him, an elderly woman sat completely motionless, her hand resting lightly over his. It was icy, almost stone. She didn't blink. She didn't speak. Until she whispered, "You can't go back." The train was now passing through a tunnel, but not like any tunnel he'd ever seen. The walls weren't rock or concrete, they were paper. Pages. Dozens of pages fluttering and curling as the train passed, with dates scribbled in red: 1978, 1941, 1899, 2026. Like each section of the tunnel was a time fragment. And through the windows, he began to see snapshots, brief flickers of lives. Families waving goodbye, soldiers in uniforms, a girl losing her balloon, a man falling from a platform edge. Then, Miles's own face, reflected not in the window, but inside one of the mirrored panels of the car. The words appeared on his camera screen as it reactivated. Live transmission, passenger 68. There had only been 67 on the last recorded manifest. And now, he was 68. The train didn't lurch forward or slow down, it simply continued, humming softly like a machine far too old to still be alive. Yet alive it was. Miles Holloway remained in the seat where the old woman had whispered, "You can't go back," but when he looked beside him again, she was gone. Not a single trace, not even a warm indentation on the cushion. In fact, the seat next to him now looked dustless, almost new, like it had never been used at all. But that wasn't possible. The rest of the car was still covered in age. Rusted metal, cracked leather, old velvet curtains that swayed slightly though there was no wind. Something had shifted. Or maybe something had just begun. The train wasn't just moving through physical space. It was tunneling through moments. Moments forgotten, moments erased, and most dangerously, moments unclaimed. He stood up, slowly, stepping into the narrow aisle and walking past the silent passengers whose faces remained hidden, obscured by everything from antique veils to cracked mirrors strapped to their heads. Every passenger's face told a different kind of silence. The kind of silence that screamed. He wanted to ask who they were, where they had come from, but his voice wouldn't work, not in here. Like the train itself, rejected questions. Like speaking was a currency he hadn't yet earned. Still, his instincts told him to move, document, observe, capture. So he lifted his camera and began filming again. The lens flickered, a slight distortion, then settled. But when he looked through the screen, what he saw wasn't the same as what was in front of him. The passengers, they weren't sitting anymore. They were standing, crowding the aisle, staring at him. Faces exposed, eyes black, mouths open, but only in the camera feed. The naked eye saw them frozen in their seats. It was as if the camera had become a window to a version of reality not meant to be seen. A voice, thin and metallic, emerged from a speaker above his head, like an old PA system from the 1950s, riddled with static and ancient feedback. Now approaching, archive car. Please remain seated unless summoned. Miles felt a chill as he walked forward, stepping through the sliding doors between compartments. The next car was unlike anything he'd ever seen. It was a library, but one stitched together from hundreds of different eras. Books from the 1800s, typewritten reports from the 40s, handwritten journals, digitized hologram. Every wall, floor, and ceiling was a mix of information formats stacked together like sedimentary rock, and it all pulsed slightly, as though breathing. In the center of the car stood a glass display case. Inside, glowing under a dull white light, was a leather-bound book titled Passenger Manifest. He stepped toward it, half expecting an alarm. Nothing. The case clicked open on its own, and the scent of old paper hit him like the cold. He opened it. The first page was handwritten in ink. Manifest. Train 113. The Midnight Line. Passengers in transit. 67. Then, below, one by one, the names. Alice M. Gray, disappeared 1978. Boston Central, Timothy Carver, lost 1964. Whitby Junction, Lucille Wynn, vanished 1922. Richmond Cross, William K. Harper. Missing 1987, Dover North. And then, at the bottom of the list, a name freshly added in modern print. Miles Holloway, documentarian. Boarded 2:13 a.m. And beneath it, space for one more. His fingers shook as he turned the page, but instead of names, the next section showed photographs, each one taken moments before a disappearance. Grainy, black and white shots, some in color, some still wet with chemical development. A woman at a payphone, a man in uniform stepping onto a platform, a child holding a balloon, a man with a camera. Him. It was the exact image from his camera earlier, the reflection from the mirrored wall. His own face, distorted, eyes shadowed. Underneath, Subject 68. In transit. Suddenly, the lights in the archive car dimmed and the train shook violently. Not like from movement, but like something had landed on top of it, or inside it. The pages of the manifest began turning on their own, too fast to read, slamming open near the end. A section labeled unclaimed, names crossed out, faces scratched, passengers who had boarded but never completed the journey, trapped, glitched, lost in loops. Some marked with symbols he couldn't decipher, like arcane rail sigils, or digital errors from old punch cards. Then, the glass case slammed shut. The voice returned, colder this time. Next stop, Reflection Bay. Prepare for evaluation. As he exited the car, the hallway seemed longer than it had been before, twisting, shifting. The floor felt unstable, like walking on soft gravel. He passed another compartment door, this one slightly ajar. Inside, the walls were covered in mirrors, not decorative, but absorbing. As he stepped in, each mirror shimmered and lit up with a scene. His memories, only wrong, his mother's face blurred out. A childhood home missing a front door, his reflection crying at a funeral he didn't remember attending. It wasn't nostalgia, it was corruption, his mind being repainted. In the center of the mirrored chamber, a figure stood, wearing a conductor's uniform, face obscured by shadows that refused to lift. No eyes, no lips, just an outline. "You recorded," the figure said, though its mouth didn't move. "You've taken what doesn't belong to the living." Then, almost gently, it raised one hand and pointed. The mirrors collapsed into themselves, folding into a corridor. He followed. What else could he do? At the end of the hallway, he stepped into what looked like the original boarding platform again, but now frozen in a memory. Snow fell, lights flickered. People walked by without seeing him. It was Boston, 1978. He was watching a memory not his own. Standing in front of him, a young woman with a fur-lined coat holding a child. The child looked directly at him, eyes full of fear, mouth silently mouthing, "You're not supposed to be here." The conductor returned, walking beside him through the ghost platform, and whispered, "This train doesn't take passengers, it takes patterns. You boarded with curiosity, you'll leave with consequence." Suddenly, Miles was back in his seat, breathing heavily. All other passengers now stared at him, faces visible, all different eras, all still, all dead. The train's lights dimmed to nearly black, and then came the final announcement. Next stop, Last departure. And top of the tower, the song has been part of the funeral song. The train had gone completely silent. No more announcements, no more humming, just the slow, rhythmic creak of ancient metal groaning in anticipation, as if the train itself was holding its breath. Miles Holloway sat frozen in the final car, surrounded by passengers that no longer tried to hide their faces. Each of them turned to stare directly at him, eyes empty, skin pale as ash, some half-rotted, others far too fresh. Like they had only just arrived, or had been waiting for him, for years, for decades. Outside the window, the landscape no longer resembled anything human. It wasn't a city, not even countryside. It was a dark, shifting horizon, made of fog and distant lights that blinked like dying stars. The tracks twisted and curved into nowhere, like veins in a dead body. The conductor hadn't returned, but his presence still lingered, thick in the air like smoke. Suddenly, the train began to slow, not with a jolt, but a long, agonizing crawl, as if time itself was thinning, and then the voice returned, this time not over the intercom, but whispering from inside his own ears. Final stop. All remaining passengers must now disembark. The car doors hissed open, but there was no platform outside, just a staircase descending into pitch black. No rails, no signs, no light, just steps and the sense that whatever lay below had never been meant to surface. Miles stood, his knees trembling, his camera still rolling. Somehow it still had battery, still had storage, still obeyed. He looked at the other passengers. None of them moved. They stared forward, silent, watching, waiting for him to go. He stepped down. The staircase felt longer than it should have been. Each step echoed as if falling into a deep well. The walls were damp, but there were no walls, just air pressing against him, suffocating, thick like syrup. And then, the ground leveled. A massive chamber opened before him. A forgotten terminal, ancient and unfinished, carved into some impossible dimension. Giant clocks hung suspended in midair, all ticking at different speeds. Shadows moved without sources. Rusted benches floated above fractured marble floors, and in the center, surrounded by fog, sat a mirror. Not an ordinary one. This mirror was alive. The frame pulsated like a heartbeat, veins of light crawling across its surface. And when he looked into it, he saw himself, but not as he was. His reflection wore a train uniform. His eyes were hollow. His mouth bled of black ink. And behind him stood all 67 missing passengers, waiting in perfect silence. The reflection raised its hand, and so did Miles. It smiled, and his lips moved without meaning to. You recorded, you took, you carried their echoes. Now you are the conductor. Suddenly, the lights above flashed, and the entire chamber shuddered, as if hit by a shockwave. The mirror shattered without making a sound, and every shard hovered in the air like glass suspended in water. Within each piece, a version of Miles stared back, each from a different time, a different out. In one, he never boarded the train. In another, he jumped off too late. In another, he aged 40 years in seconds. Every version of him was wrong, except this one, the one who stayed, the one who recorded. A voice, clearer now, colder, spoke from every direction at once. You asked for the story, so you became part of it. You documented the dead, you wore their memories, now they wear you, and then came the final blow. His camera turned itself around, filming him, dreaming, broadcasting, and the words on the screen, transmission complete, manifest locked, new conductor assigned. A metal rail rose from the ground, lifting Miles back up as if on an invisible elevator. He screamed. No one heard him. Or maybe they all did. But it didn't matter now. Back on the train, in the control car, a seat waited, one made of bone and brass, wired directly into the dashboard of the Midnight Line. He was lowered into it, his arms pulled forward, his fingers fused into rusted levers. His eyes stared straight ahead, no longer blinking. The doors closed behind him, steam hissed, lights dimmed, and a fresh automated voice spoke through his unmoving mouth. Welcome aboard the Midnight Line. Next departure, unknown. Passenger count, 0. Conductor, assigned. And with a low growl, the train vanished into the fog once more, heading toward another platform, another forgotten city, another curious soul who'd asked the wrong question at the right time. Somewhere, another station flickers back to life. Platform 13 breathes again, and someone hears a horn echo from the dark.